Torture is a hero you don't see that often in pubs, but occasionally you see him in competitive play. Most people avoid Torture simply because he's one of the most fragile heroes in the game. In addition to having pitiful health, Torture also suffers from the fact that he has no escape mechanisms, and his only stun is difficult to land. Despite being a risky hero though, Torture can be a powerhouse of DPS with 4 activated abilities, each of which dish out heavy amounts of damage. Because of this, however, Torture also suffers from mana issues in addition to health issues. Torture wears many hats. He's a pusher, a ganker, and even qualifies as a soft carry in most cases. When played right, Torture is a powerhouse, dishing out insane amounts of damage. When played wrong, however, Torture can quickly become a walking pile of money, just be waiting to be killed. On to his skills. Recently S2 changed Chain Reaction so that the radius is constant at all ranks. Chain Reaction is a very large AoE stun that can be devastating late game, in addition to being a powerful ganking tool early on. The hardest part, though, is landing it. Like Pyromancer's Dragonfire, Chain Reaction takes a while to cast. Unlike Pyromancer, however, Torture never gains spell haste through spells, so you're going to have to man up and get used to the slow cast time. In most cases, you will be using it against moving targets, in which case you will need to be able to predict their pathing. Fast enemies can be particularly difficult to hit. Generally, aiming it depends on the situation. If the enemy has a lot of open room to move, juking your stun will be easier. But if the enemy has to run through a choke point or simply can't afford to run anywhere but straight ahead, landing your stun shouldn't be a problem. Calculate for their speed and aim slightly ahead. Agonizing Bonds, on the other hand, is a refreshingly easy spell to hit with, and on top of that, it's totally spammable. Already for this reason, I like to max Agonizing Bonds early. It gives Torture a laning presence, lets him harass, and also lets him score some easy last hits in the process. When casting Agonizing Bonds, you usually don't want to target the thing that you're trying to hit, assuming you aren't just harassing or finishing somebody off. By targeting something else, usually closer to you, Agonizing Bonds will drag the enemy closer to that target, dragging it closer to you. You can use this to set up stuns or to help your teammate initiate on the enemy. Use Agonizing Bonds to grab somebody closer when they move into last hit creeps. Impalement is an incredible ability. At rank 1, Impalement dishes out 300 damage and adds another 300 per rank, capping off at 1200 at rank 4. Of course, this is assuming that your target is the only thing next to you, which isn't always the case. Interestingly enough, Impalement deals physical damage and works on towers, probably making it the most powerful pushing spell in the entire game considering its cooldown. Because of this, most people consider Impalement a purely pushing ability and usually level it after Chain Reaction and Agonizing Bonds. I usually disagree with this build personally and get 1 rank of Chain Reaction while maxing Impalement and Agonizing Bonds most of the time. While it is true that Impalement is an incredible pushing ability, it can also be used for ganking. Since Torture is a fragile hero, especially early on, this can be problematic because it means you have to be uncomfortably close to anything that you're trying to kill. Still, all things considered, I usually like maxing Impalement simply because it can dish out more damage than Chain Reaction, and also helps you push towers early on. I also back up my reasoning with the fact that Chain Reaction now has the same area of effect at every rank. However, depending on the situation, if you're fighting heroes that you cannot get close to, or soloing middle, you may want to consider leveling up Chain Reaction alongside Agonizing Bonds, saving Impalement for last. Torment is a great ability later in the game, but early on it is simply not worth getting. Torture already has mana problems with 3 spells, and having a 4th spell that drains your mana every second simply isn't something that you can put up with early game. If you decide to solo mid, getting a bottle is in your best interest. Since you are so fragile, the bottle will usually heal you up extremely quickly. If you're in the side lanes, however, you usually don't need to get a bottle, mostly because your ally in the mid lane should already have one and should be getting all the runes. Early game, you should be ganking, pushing, and farming. What matters here most for me is not dying. Torture is only as powerful as his items are late game, and dying a lot early on will severely set you back, so take care when ganking. When pushing towers, make sure your Impalement is only hitting the tower and nothing else. When ganking with your teammates, always stun first, drop Agonizing Bonds, and then if it is safe enough, run in with Impalement. When laning with an ally, it's important to lane with someone who can help you set up your stun as well as to take advantage of it when it happens. The main item of choice for Torture is Bloodstone. Generally, Torture lacks 3 things: mobility, health and mana, and regeneration. Bloodstone already covers 2 out of 3 of these aspects, and therefore should be picked up immediately. A bracer or 2 can provide you with some early game survivability, but in most cases investing in more than 1 can lead you into financial problems in terms of finishing that Bloodstone as soon as possible. When assembling Bloodstone, some people like to get Icon of the Goddess first, but I usually like to have the Sustainer for the regen. You stay squishy, but it means you never have to back and gives you enough farming power to assemble the rest of the Bloodstone quicker. Depending on what you're up against, feel free to get the Icon first though. Mobility is another problem of Torture. Boots-wise, phase boots and post-haste both fit the build quite well. Generally, you need post-haste for late-game pushing and farming. However, post-hastes are extremely expensive, and Torture doesn't have a cent to waste early game. It's a tough choice to make, but I usually end up saving up for post-haste. Portal Key is another item to think about when considering mobility. It gives Torture much needed mobility and survivability, but literally nothing else. Since Torture is an extremely item-dependent hero, I suggest that you think about this purchase carefully, especially if you aren't doing too well. In most cases, I would suggest not getting it directly after Bloodstone, if at all. Staff of the Master is another great item for Torture after Bloodstone, because in addition to increasing his ult, it also provides you with a lot more health and mana, something that you really need. I usually grab this directly after Bloodstone, assuming I do not need protection against magic or silence. Coldr's Sheepstick is another great item for the same reason. Frostfield Plate is another item that feels like it was just designed for Torture, giving you a ton of mana and the ability to slow opponents. Depending on what you're up against though, getting some survivability items like Shrunken Head, Millstone, or Behemoth's Heart can be a good idea. Usually, if your enemy has a lot of single target spells, Millstone is the better idea because the passive bonuses are simply a lot better for you than Shrunken Head or Behemoth's Heart. I usually never go for Shaman's Headdress unless I'm facing something like a Wretched Hag, Behemoth, or a Magnus, who simply dish out a ton of area of effective damage.